Welcome to the Veteran Vault, where experience meets insight and every story adds value. If you believe in learning from the past to build a stronger future, make sure to join our community by subscribing and becoming a member of the channel. What does freedom really cost? It's not a word written in history books. It's written in sacrifice. Every step we take in peace today was paid for by someone who never made it home. I stand here not as a hero, but as a reminder of those who gave everything. Because the truth is, the greatest stories of courage are often the ones that never got told. This week on Friend, we're joined by Vietnam veteran Mike Thornton, a Navy SEAL and Medal of Honor recipient. Mike, it's truly an honor to have you here. I was born in Greenville, South Carolina, but I grew up in Spartanburg. My dad used to say I was barely 6 months old when I ended up there, and that's where I was raised. Military service ran deep in my family. My father served in World War II from 1937 to 1946, and all my uncles were in the military too. So from a young age, I always felt like that path was waiting for me. I struggled a lot in school because of severe dyslexia. Back then, people didn't understand it the way they do now. No matter how hard I studied, it didn't seem to show in my grades. But I always knew one thing: I wanted to serve. And more than that, I wanted to be a Navy frogman. That dream came from two places. One was a story about 5 brothers who gave their lives trying to save each other. Family meant everything in my house, and that story stayed with me. The other was a movie about UDT frogmen during the Korean War. I remember watching it and thinking, that's exactly what I want to do. I was a strong swimmer and an athlete, so I believed I had a shot. I joined the Navy at 17 through the 120-day program. After training, I ended up on the USS Brewster, but when it was decommissioned, it opened the door for me to go into SEAL training. Back then, it wasn't called Bud/S yet, but it was just as intense. We started with 129 guys in my class, and only 12 of us made it through. A few rolled into the next class, but most didn't finish. That kind of training stays with you forever. It pushes you beyond anything you think you're capable of. And one thing it teaches you very quickly is that it's not about the individual, it's about the team. I remember guys ringing the bell and quitting. Some said they did it because their friends quit. But in that kind of environment, that's not your friend. When things get real, when bullets are flying and chaos takes over, you need people who won't walk away. That's what the training is really about. It builds a bond that lasts a lifetime. Even now, more than 50 years later, I'm still close with many of those guys. After training, I went to SEAL Team 1. A group of us from the same class ended up serving together in Vietnam. We stayed connected, even when we were in different roles. There was always that understanding we had each other's backs. By the time of my 4th tour in Vietnam, things were very different. I had already served multiple deployments, including time in Thailand and Laos, on operations that weren't even acknowledged until years later. I didn't have to go back for that 4th tour, but I was asked to return and lead 6 young men who had never been in combat before. I agreed with one goal in mind: to bring every one of them home alive. And by the grace of God, I did. The mission that led to the Medal of Honor took place on October 31st, 1972, Halloween. It started quietly. Only 2 of us knew the full details of the operation: Tommy Norris and myself. We selected 2 experienced Vietnamese SEALs to join us. These were men who had been fighting their entire lives, far longer than any of us had been in the war. We were inserted deep into enemy territory, near the DMZ, but due to a navigation error, we ended up even farther north than planned, actually inside North Vietnam. Our objective was to capture an enemy soldier for intelligence. That was often the fastest way to get real-time information. At first, things went according to plan. We managed to capture 1 target, but the situation quickly turned. We were suddenly surrounded by a large enemy force, about 75 soldiers. What followed was intense, close-quarters combat. During the firefight, Tommy was shot in the head and lost an eye. I was hit 7 times. One of our men was severely wounded, and another was shot multiple times in the back. Despite everything, we kept fighting. At one point, I chased down an enemy soldier who tried to escape and neutralized him. But when I looked up, I realized we were completely exposed. That's when Tommy, despite his injuries, fired a rocket into the trees. Not to hit anything, but to create a distraction so I could make it back to our position. In moments like that, training, trust, and brotherhood are everything. It's not about medals or recognition. It's about the man next to you. It's about doing whatever it takes to get each other out alive. And somehow, against all odds, we did. We were outnumbered, wounded, and deep behind enemy lines, but we made it back. Every man survived that mission. That's what mattered most then, and it still does today. There was one officer with us who was supposed to be experienced, but later we found out he had never actually been in a real firefight before. Still, he did what he could in that moment. I positioned Quan on my eastern side where the ocean was, while I held a point that had a large lagoon behind it. Tommy and Dang were up on top of a bunker, about 25 feet high. That bunker had a tunnel system underneath, so if naval gunfire started coming in, they could drop down, wait it out, and then come back up to continue fighting. When the situation escalated, we were basically 4 men against around 75 enemy fighters. It didn't feel like it at the time. You just focus on what needs to be done. During the fight, I had already been hit multiple times by shrapnel from grenades. Tommy told me to fall back with Quan and the young officer while he stayed behind to slow the enemy down. As we pulled back, Tommy kept firing to draw them toward him, buying us time to reach a sand dune about 500 yards away across open ground. That stretch of beach was completely exposed. No cover, nothing to hide behind. The enemy kept trying to close in, coming from different directions. I kept moving constantly, firing from different positions, throwing grenades and shifting angles. That movement made it seem like we had more men than we actually did. They couldn't tell if they were facing a handful of us or a much larger force, and that confusion helped us survive. At one point, we were throwing a captured grenade back and forth with the enemy. It wasn't like the American ones with a predictable fuse. This one could take much longer to explode. I knew I had a few seconds each time, but on the last throw, I realized it had been too long. When I rolled over, it detonated right there, and I got hit. I remember yelling out and Tommy calling for me, but I didn't respond. I just lay there for a second. Then when enemy fighters came over the dune, I took them out. There was no time to think, you just act. Tommy decided to stay up top a bit longer to cover our movement. As we started pulling back again, the enemy charged harder. That's when Tommy got hit in the head while firing a rocket. He and Dang managed to come down toward us while naval gunfire from offshore supported us. Later, we learned the firefight lasted nearly 3 hours. When Dang reached us, he told me Tommy was dead. I didn't accept that. I went back for him anyway. When I got there, I believed he was gone, but I still picked him up and carried him. I ran with him across that open ground, under heavy fire. At one point, I was hit again and dropped, but I got back up and kept moving. I carried him the distance of several football fields. By then, all of us were badly wounded. Tommy had a head injury, Quan couldn't swim because of severe wounds to his leg, and Dang was hit by grenade fragments. I got Tommy into the water first, secured him to my back, and then went back for Quan. I held Quan in front of me while he helped keep Tommy in place behind me. Then we started swimming out to sea. We stayed in the water for hours. I was already wounded multiple times, exhausted, and dealing with the shock of everything that had happened. But there wasn't another option. I had to keep them alive. Tommy was going into shock, and the warmth from my body helped keep him stable. Quan struggled, but we kept moving together. Dang was ahead of us in the water. Eventually, we were picked up by our extraction team. They had been waiting offshore, ready to come in if needed. By that time, we had been surrounded by hundreds of enemy fighters, and it's honestly a miracle they didn't have to fight their way in to get us. When we reached a boat, I remember trying to lift Tommy aboard and barely having the strength to do it, even though I had been in top physical condition. We were all completely spent. From there, we were transferred to a larger ship with medical support. I carried Tommy up myself and got him onto the operating table before going to give a report on what had happened. Tommy was evacuated for surgery and went through years of recovery, multiple operations, and a long time in the hospital. When the time came for me to receive the Medal of Honor, he was still there. I made sure he was with me. I wasn't going to leave him behind then, not after everything we had been through together. Looking back, people ask how I kept going after being wounded so many times. The truth is, in those moments, it's not about you. It's about the people beside you and the mission you're trying to complete. Fear, pain, exhaustion, they all take a back seat. You either act or you don't. And if you don't, someone else pays the price. On January 13th, 1973, which also happened to be my father's birthday, I got a call that would change everything. He asked me if I had heard the news. I told him no, I hadn't heard anything. Then he said, "You've been nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor." I thought he was out of his mind. It didn't feel real at all. But not long after that, the official letter arrived, and it hit me that this was actually happening. Funny enough, my dad knew before I did. My father had never been on an airplane in his life, but this meant so much to him that he flew out anyway. He said if he couldn't fly, he would have driven or taken a train, whatever it took. I honestly think he was more excited than I was. That day meant a lot to him, and seeing his pride was something I'll never forget. I managed to keep Tommy with me for 4 days during that time. I figured I was already in enough trouble, so I might as well enjoy it. I even checked him into the hotel under my brother's name, so no one would catch on. We had a great time together, just enjoying the moment. My parents were there, along with my younger brother and other family members. I wish my little sister could have been there too, but she was pregnant and couldn't travel. We also had close friends join us, people who had been part of our lives for years. It turned into something really special, surrounded by people who mattered. When the ceremony finally happened, there was only one Medal of Honor being presented that day. Mine. Tommy hadn't received his yet. His would come almost 3 years later. But he stood there with me, and later on I made sure I was there when he received his medal as well. That meant everything to me. I did get some time with the president. It was President Nixon, and I always respected him. He even sent me copies of all the books he had written, which I thought was pretty remarkable. One moment that really stood out was when he hugged my mother. Apparently, he didn't usually do that, so it made it even more meaningful. My mom was deeply moved by it. There were others there too, including Admiral Moore, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time. He treated my parents with incredible kindness. He personally walked them through the White House, introduced them to everyone, including Mrs. Nixon, and made sure they felt completely welcomed. My dad only had a 6th grade education, but you could see how proud he was. At one point he said, "That guy's just like me, a good old boy." That was his way of connecting with it all. Tommy's recovery was a long and difficult road. His final surgery came about 6.5 years after his injury. The bullet had entered his left temple and caused massive damage. They had to insert plates into his skull, but his body didn't always accept them, so doctors had to go back in multiple times to replace them. In the end, he had 3 plates, one on the top, one on the side, and one in the front. He also lost part of his frontal lobe, which affected things like taste and some aspects of memory. But the critical parts of his brain were toward the back, and thankfully, those remained intact. Considering everything, he was incredibly fortunate. Today, he's still here, in his 70s, living up in Idaho and raising horses. We've stayed close all these years. When we first went into Vietnam, I used to joke with him all the time. I'd tell him, "You're the officer, you make the call, I'll just do my job." We were always back and forth like that. Even now, we see each other around 10 times a year. Our families get together and it feels like one big extended family. We've spent time traveling together, attending events, and even giving out scholarships through my foundation to children of fallen Navy SEALs. It's something that means a lot to both of us, honoring those who gave everything. Before that day in Vietnam, we were already good friends, but what we went through together created a bond that never faded. It's something deeper than friendship. He's the godfather to my children, and we've been there for each other through every stage of life. We joke that we're like complete opposites. He's about 150 pounds soaking wet, and I'm a lot bigger than that. We argue, we laugh, we give each other a hard time, but underneath all of that is a level of respect and loyalty that never changes. Coming home from Vietnam was difficult for many people, but my experience was different. I didn't go through the same kind of homecoming others did. Tommy still deals with some memories from time to time, and I had one dream years ago about identifying fallen friends. That was back in 1969, and it stuck with me. But overall, we carried on the best we could, leaning on each other and the lives we built afterward. I never really had another nightmare after that one. But days like this remind me of something important. Freedom comes at a cost. It's not something that just exists on its own. It's been paid for, over and over again, by people willing to give everything. The medal I wear. I've never truly felt like I earned it. I don't think I ever will. Some people say I did, but in my mind, it represents so much more than just me. It stands for the hundreds of thousands, over 850,000, who gave their lives for this country. When you think about places like Arlington National Cemetery or the Texas State Cemetery, and so many others across the nation, you start to realize just how many people made the ultimate sacrifice to keep America free. That's what it's always been about. I don't like getting into politics, but I do believe we have to protect what has made this country strong. History has shown that certain systems don't work, no matter how many times people try to make them work. And yet, there are always voices saying it'll be different this time. I don't believe that. What we have, our Constitution, our rights, the foundation this country was built on, has stood the test of time for a reason. I've traveled to around 90 countries in my life, and I can tell you firsthand, there's something truly special about America. It's not perfect, but it's unique. And when you wear something like the Medal of Honor, it comes with a weight. It's not just something you put on, it's something you carry, especially in quiet moments when you reflect on what it represents. I think about the men and women who never made it home, the ones who never got the chance to hug their kids again, or meet their grandchildren, or grow old with their families. That hits hard, because I've been given that chance. I've been able to live a full life, to see my children and grandchildren grow, and even my great-grandchildren. That's a gift, and it came at a cost paid by others. The people who came before me, the ones who stood beside me, and those who will come after, all of them are part of the same story. My hope is that future generations, my own family included, will continue to understand the importance of service and sacrifice, and what it means to protect this country. I served as a Navy SEAL for many years, all the way through Desert Storm. Back in the late 1970s, I worked alongside British Special Forces units like the SAS on counterterrorism operations. Then, in 1980, I was part of the original group that helped form SEAL Team 6. Around the same time, Delta Force was being established here in the US under General Shai Meyer and others. Those were early days for modern counterterrorism, and it's incredible to see how far those units have come since then. When I first joined the SEALs, there were only about 236 of us. That was it. Now, the community has grown tremendously, and I couldn't be prouder of the men who stepped forward to serve. Not just in the Navy, but across all branches: Army, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard. These are people who volunteer to put themselves in harm's way for something bigger than themselves. Eventually, the day came when I was told I couldn't serve anymore. And when that happened, I didn't see it as the end. I just looked at it as the next chapter. I asked myself, all right, what's next? How can I continue to serve in a different way? And that's what I've tried to do ever since. When people ask what I'm most proud of, the answer is simple: my wife, my family, and the life we've built together. At the end of the day, that's what matters most. I'm grateful for the journey, for the people I've met along the way, and for the opportunity to serve this country. And I'll always carry that with me. This is the Veteran Vault. In the end, this story was never just about one man or one moment. It's about sacrifice, brotherhood, and the price of freedom that so many have paid. The medal may carry one name, but it represents countless others who never made it home. What matters most is remembering them, honoring their legacy, and carrying forward the values they fought for. Because true greatness isn't measured by what we achieve for ourselves, but by what we are willing to give for others. And that is the responsibility we all share.